What's going on, guys? This is Kyle from Hospitality MD, and we are back this week with another episode of the podcast presented right here on YouTube. Before we get started, you guys know the drill. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications for this channel, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. Our interview this week is with David Lund. He is the hotel financial coach, and this episode is all about hotel financials 101, unlocking the door to the executive committee and confronting the chaos and the potential of learning your numbers, which is, for a lot of people, including myself, really the hardest thing and usually the last thing that people will have an opportunity to learn. I think you guys are really going to take a lot of value away from this episode. So enjoy, sit back. We'll see you at the end of the video. Well, David Lund, welcome to Hospitality MD. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great, Kyle. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. And, this isn't your first hospitality podcast, but it is your first time on Hospitality MD. And today we want to utilize your unique niche that you found to help our listeners and our viewers who are typically younger hoteliers, according to our listener demographics. If you are older and you're listening, thank you as well. We love you. But yeah, so we have a lot of younger listeners and people who are kind of moving up and trying to supplement their career education or their college education with a little bit of extra media. But one thing that seems to be almost the hardest thing for people to learn and the scariest thing that causes the most anxiety for a lot of people is what, David? What would you say it is?
The numbers.
The numbers.
Hands down. Yeah, the numbers have a lot of power to intimidate, scare people. But it's really not that scary. And if anybody who's listening, has a handle on their numbers, they can look back like I can at the other side of the bridge and remember when we didn't understand what was going on and we thought how scary it was. But now we know the secrets, and it just takes a little practice.
So the other side of the bridge, right? Because you can cross that, you can get to the other side, and like you said, look back and remember how scared you were at the beginning. Yeah. But I think that there is, and I've even fallen victim to this too, with my dad being a finance guy, CPA, who's, when I've asked him for help with things in the past, it's just like, wow, you're the worst teacher on the planet. And this is even worse than when I started out. I should have never asked you, right? But I think there's maybe a common perception that you either have it or you don't. It's in your DNA. You either are a numbers person or you're not a numbers person. What do you think about that? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, it's a popular myth, that's for sure. I was born without the financial gene. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from people. But it's not true, because it's really what they're missing is some instruction and practice. And I don't know whether you play golf or not, but it's exactly the same. If you've never golfed before, you might look at it and go, I don't think so. But if you come golfing with me a half a dozen times, I could teach you how to golf. I know I could, as long as you can, walk around the course and take some basic instruction. The practice will take care of the rest of it.
Okay. So to make a comparison like that means that it's really doesn't seem like it's as hard as people make it out to be. But I'm curious, right? Because you've heard this from people.
Yeah.
I've personally felt this. And at one point you were in operations, you didn't start out in finance, so you've also experienced it yourself coming up in the business. I would like to know what your viewpoints are on why we've gotten to the point now where people are so anxious, so intimidated, and a lot of times will shut down at being confronted with the financials and being confronted with the numbers. Why do you think we've reached this point here in the industry?
Well, we all come from the same world, and that's the world of an owner operator. So just a few short decades ago, that was our industry. The name on the door was the owner, the Hilton, the Marriott. But it's not like that anymore. Now we're management companies, and management companies sell expertise to owners. And in the branded managed world, we sell guest service, we sell colleague engagement, and we sell expertise as it relates to the numbers. But a lot of people use that number message the wrong way. They use it to intimidate their staff and their leaders. Like, if we don't make our numbers, we're going to have to cut. How many times have you heard that?
Right.
That's
a
numbers,
good insight.
The owner's going to be, not happy, and it's not going to be great around here. So pressure's on. That's not good. People don't like that, because that's like, playing with dynamite. What people want are, they need a system to follow. They need some support and some instruction. And if they get that, they're more than willing to lean into it and take responsibility for the numbers piece.
Right. Because when the director of finance comes walking around the corner and they're looking for you, it's usually not right. Yes, exactly. It's your heart starts beating a little faster. You're anxious. Yeah. Oh my God, what's wrong? What did we do? What are we being held accountable for that we're scared of and intimidated about because we don't really have a grasp on what's going on? Yeah. Because it's almost like, on one hand, yes, it's very scary, and it's been used almost as an intimidation for a long time. If we, again, if we don't make our numbers, we're going to cut, or, that kind of rhetoric. But also, I've been a department head, and nobody at any point in time ever said, let's talk about the numbers. That just was never a conversation. Do you feel like we may have failed as an industry to equip our emerging leaders with financial acumen?
Yeah, I definitely think we have. And, when I was growing up in the industry, the first 10 years, I was in service, rooms and food and beverage. And what was drilled into my head was, look after the guests and the numbers will look after themselves. Well, that's not true. The numbers, they never look after themselves. We need to look after them. And if I'm a department head, I need to do three things: look after my guests, look after my colleagues, and manage my payroll and expenses. That's really what it's about. And it's not difficult. We just need tools and a system to follow, and communication. And if we can give that to our leaders, again, they're more than willing to do their part. But we also have to realize that it's not perfect, and there will be months when we don't make our numbers because of things that happen business-wise, or things that happen in the hotel. We've all been there. We have to take our lumps when they happen, and also recognize that there's going to be great months. And if we have a system to follow, we'll have more good months than bad months. It's as simple as that.
So, because you've been director of finance, right, for some prominent brands, Fairmont, among others, and you've probably seen, firsthand, having to be the one in the meetings to explain the numbers most of the time, talking to ownership. We didn't hit this month, or we did. Would you say that those times that you did or didn't have been a direct result of everybody taking ownership of it? Like, have you seen a correlation between that department head really kind of grasping it and then the results coming after that, or vice versa, cluelessness and apathy or anxiety, and then that results in distress financially?
I've seen it both ways. And as a director of finance, so many times, I'd be chasing department heads like you to put in your forecast, give me your accruals, give me your commentary. It's like pulling teeth in a lot of hotels to get managers to slow down long enough to do that. But if I have a system to teach them, and if I can support them and educate them, they're much more willing to step up and do that, because they see that it's not so difficult, and they see that there's a path to follow. And they actually like it, because they know that it's the secret passcode to the executive office to greater prosperity in their career. And they know that being successful in hospitality means you know your numbers.
Because this is, I think, critical, a critical component of this conversation right here, because hospitality and hotels are such a unique industry that anybody can rise through the ranks, at least up to a certain level, by being, having great social skills, being able to meet and interact and care about people, whether that's the team or the guest, or just having the grit to work long hours and stick it through, and you build up your experience. And it's unique in that you can make it to decently high levels, department head, sometimes even higher, without a degree necessarily not being required, or without having really any knowledge of business, period, except for what you've picked up on the job. So it's unique, but then again, we're still talking about a multi-million-dollar business and a high-profile real estate asset that needs to be managed here. And people get lost, or they plateau, because then they get to that point and they don't have the passcode to get into the executive office because they never learned their financials.
Yep.
So let's talk about kind of the components to this, right? So financials in a hotel, we're talking about what? Your P&L, your monthly financial statements. Like what is this mystic financials that we should be concerned with?
Yeah, you're definitely talking about the P&L statement. And if you're the front office manager or the housekeeper, you've got really two things that you're concerned with: your payroll and your expenses. And you've got to be able to manage those, which means you've got to have a system. You've got to have a plan. Like, what are you going to spend this month, and how does that correlate to the occupancy and the average rate? And as you know, in the hotel, we start out the month, we don't have all the occupancy on the books. We book so much of our business in the month for the month. Right. And lots of times we make our numbers, and lots of times we're not going to make our occupancy. So what do I need you to do when we're not going to make our numbers? I need you to pull back. I need you to modify your schedule. I need you to, hold off on the purchase orders that aren't absolutely necessary, so I can manage the flow through. That's the pivot point that every hotel, that's why we train leaders, and that's the reward, is that we can turn the ship on a dime. Whereas if we don't have a process, and if we don't have tools, we're like the Titanic. We're going to hit that iceberg. And if I miss the top line by $150,000, I'm going to miss the bottom line by $150,000. It's that simple, or even more. So we just need to have a system and train people on what they need to do. And that's really it in a nutshell. And beyond that, it's okay, well, what do we need to do, and what do we need to train them on? But the whole idea of not having department managers do their own forecasts and be accountable for their numbers, that's a recipe for disaster. So if I'm the director of finance and I give you your numbers and say, here, Kyle, here's your forecast for this month, good luck. You're quietly thumbing your finger at me because those aren't your numbers, those are my numbers. So that's the kiss of death right off of the bat, is we never want to do that. We want to train our managers to do their own forecasts each month, and make sure that we use those in the consolidation, and make sure those numbers are the numbers that go to the brand and the owner. And that's not that difficult, really, if we're committed to it. Because the great thing about the hotel is every month the window opens and closes on our business. I get to start over again. And the same applies to, say, banquets. If you and I were working in banquets and every night we did a banquet 5 nights a week, guess what? We'd get good at doing banquets. Our window is every night. We would go for a beer after work, and we would talk about what worked and what didn't work, and we'd get better and better at it. That's just the way the business works. Well, the finances are the same, but the window is a month. Every month, we've got to do the same thing over and over again. So let's roll out the system. Let's practice. Let's learn from what worked and what didn't work, and get better and better. And if we're committed to it, and if we realize it's just another thing that we need to do that's never going to go away, we'll get better at it. It's that simple.
So I want to, because I almost feel like we may be potentially speaking a little bit over the head of some of our listeners who maybe are literally clueless on any of this stuff, which if you're listening and when you hear about forecasting and budgeting and all this stuff, you literally are like, sounds like we're speaking a different language, then it's okay. You are not alone, right? It's okay to not know because you just haven't learned about it yet. So David, let's just, so we can have some context for our audience. These, when you're talking about budget, right, and hitting this every single month, and then you also mentioned forecasting, these numbers are essentially arbitrary, right? Like this budget is something that ownership and executive committee puts together, and they're essentially just making educated guesses, right? Can you kind of go through this for our listeners a little bit so we know what we're talking about here?
So that's the way it's done in some hotels. Like you say, it's kind of put together in camera, as we would say, like off of the beaten path. The executives put it together, head office reviews it, approves it, makes some changes, and then all of a sudden it comes down from above. But that's exactly the wrong approach. Again, I'll use you as a front office manager. If you're my front office manager and we're putting together the budget, you're doing the budget. You're coming up with the payroll for every single month next year. You're coming up with your expenses and you're reviewing those with me. And we're going back and forth on what's going to be put in the budget, what's acceptable. And that's pretty rigorous the first time you do it. But there's a system to follow, and we use zero-based expenses and we use staffing guides. So I can teach you how to get the information you need. So you can talk to me about guest supplies, and you can talk to me about guest amenities, and you can talk to me about the expense for subscriptions and all the different things that you need to run your department. And I can show you how to manage those.
So you've worked in as a director of finance where the budget was made that way, where they really...
Oh, absolutely.
Because this is honestly, I'm literally, in all of my experience, every single one has been that the budget is just
comes down
from above. This budget that is just placed in your hand, right?
That's what's wrong with our industry. That's the way we do it. We do it backwards. That doesn't mean everybody does it that way, but I tell you, the brand that I worked for, and you mentioned the name in the beginning, we had a policy internally that department managers are responsible to create their own budgets and they're responsible for their numbers. And that was hammered into everybody's head. And it was my job to make sure that you did exactly that. And that's difficult because you're busy and time is precious and we're all busy, from one week to the next and 1 month to the next. Who's got time to do all this stuff? So one of the things I need to teach you is how to be efficient with that. And what's the system, David? And I don't mean the computer system, I mean the communication system. So you understand what it is I need from you and where to go to get it and figure it out. Because it's like riding a bicycle. The first time you're going to land on your chin a couple of times, you're going to scrape some knees. I understand that, but if I can keep you together long enough, you're going to figure it out. And then all of a sudden you're going to be so much better at your job because you understand what's going on. Now we're away to the races. And that's really what, teams and hotels can create if they embrace financial leadership and support their managers so that everybody is on the same page with how we operate. And you're right, like a lot of hotels, they just don't do that. And it's one of the biggest things I think that needs to change in our industry. We need to educate our leaders.
I couldn't agree more. And again, before we dive more into that, I want to make sure that our listeners also know to kind of define this forecasting process as well, because so we've got the budget, whether it comes down from above or whether in the brand that you were previously employed with or in some other hotels that you work together within your department to come up with the brand or come up with the budget to start the year. Okay. Yep. So now forecasting, it's similar but different, right? Why don't you go ahead and explain that to everyone so they know what that is?
Yeah, so once the budget's done and approved, it's locked up, and we don't change those numbers. So now let's imagine we're rolling into January, the first month of the year. Well, Kyle, I need your forecast, and I'm going to be asking you for that probably in the last week of December. And what you need to do is take the latest occupancy and rate projections from the revenue manager and tell me what you think we're going to do next month. And then how does that relate to your payroll and expenses? So let's imagine we budgeted 75% occupancy and the latest forecast from the revenue manager is 65%. Well, guess what? Your payroll and expenses are based on 75. So I need you to forecast. Tell me what you really need next month. The opposite is also true. Maybe we're going to have a great month and it looks like we're going to do 82% in January. Wow, off the charts. Well, guess what? Your budget's based on 75. So what are you going to do? What projects have you been sitting on that you could probably do next month that we've been waiting to pull the trigger on? Those are things too. Like maybe you need to hire, additional person for the weekend, like you've been talking about. Well, let's take a look at that for January. That's something maybe we can do. So we're actually looking at how we manage our business. We look at how we manage what we need to deliver on, because it's going to be delivered one way or another, right? The month marches on and we do our schedules and we do our POs. But we're really flying by the seat of our pants if we don't have a system. And the system starts with you doing your budget and then you doing your forecasts and being able to steer your area of the business according to the latest business intelligence. How much business are we going to do?
And I think that's critical because, and I've seen this and I've been that guy myself where if you don't actually get a chance to get your hands dirty, because I've been lucky enough where I've never been able to do the budget before ever, which is, I guess, it's widespread. So, the industry needs to change, right? But I have been lucky enough to where the budget is handed down from above, but the forecast was something that was, that at least one part of it, I had the opportunity to participate in. And I found that my just awareness of just everything was skyrocketing. Like I felt like I had more control over the things that I enjoyed doing, which was making the guest experience and the team member experience as great as possible, because I knew, okay, I'm going to get a little, like if when I didn't have to do the forecast and the revenue manager sends in the main forecast, I'll take a look at it. But it's okay, because all I'm worried about is what's happening the next day, the next week when I do the schedule. I'll take a look, but it's all going to change anyway, so I don't really care. But when you actually have to synthesize that information and be held accountable for it and know what that's going to look like, my experience personally was that I just was way more aware, way more in tune, tapped into everything. I felt like I could have high level conversations with executive leadership all the time because I knew what was going on in the hotel for the entire month. And I knew how my piece of the pie was related to that.
You were what we would say engaged.
Thank you. That's the word for it. Yeah. And it's crazy how something that I never wanted to do, and I still just don't enjoy doing it because I'm just not passionate about waking up and, doing the forecast or making any commentary at the end of them. It feels like it never ends. Just when you're done with it, you got to do it again. That's what the one thing I don't like about it. But I will say that there were some tangible rewards like that engagement and also just, I felt like, wow, I feel like I know the business better now as a result of doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to learn so much more about what really is happening inside of the business. And, at the end of the day, the owner, the management company, the brand, they're really concerned about the numbers. They're concerned about everything else, but not in the same way. They're concerned about guest service and the colleague engagement scores and all those things, but those aren't going to sink the ship. If we're not going to make our numbers, it's a different deal. And, young leaders like you need to realize that that's your key to advancement is stepping into that. Because put the shoe on the other foot, and let's imagine you're the GM. What's your job? Your job is to get all the department managers to operate at the highest possible level when it comes to their guests, when it comes to their colleagues, and when it comes to the numbers. And if you're a GM and you're looking, oh, the director of finance will take care of that. Well, those department managers don't report to him. They report to you as the GM. So how are you setting the tone when it comes to the numbers, and what are you holding people accountable for?
Well, and let's talk about that because, when you're working at a Fairmont or you're at a city center property and it's big box, it's full service, it's luxury,
Great.
you're going to have that infrastructure, right, of a finance department. You're going to have all of this stuff that kind of will allow you to hide a little bit. Maybe you have this veil that you can hide behind because you have that infrastructure. But for the large majority of hoteliers, they are maybe, and for our GMs out there who are listening, I know if you're the GM of a Hilton Garden Inn or a Residence Inn or a Hyatt House, for example, it's all on you. And there are GMs who are the end all be all for these smaller hotels who still are struggling with the financials. And, I also think that leads to inefficiencies within the management company because you have regional roles that are basically babysitting finances of the GMs. When if the GMs were fluent in finances, you could almost maybe downsize those regional roles a little bit because the GM should be able to run their own business. Do you agree? And do you see kind of that disparity a little bit? Like, it's ironic that when you're select service GM,
Absolutely.
It's all on you and you still don't know it a lot of times.
I mean, it's very diverse in the level of performance, if you want to call it that. Because when you look at things from the biggest, most sophisticated hotels that have finance departments, they're doing budgets, they're doing monthly forecasts, they're doing monthly financial statements, they're doing commentaries. But if you go to the other end of the spectrum and it's a 75-room limited service hotel, that hotel might not even have monthly financial statements, let alone a budget or forecast. They might do their financial statement once a year. And they
Really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and they might not even have the accrual basis of accounting as the system they use. They might use the cash basis. So they're in the weeds. They're in the Stone Ages, but they don't need to be. Financial leadership and creating this kind of intelligence inside of your business, it's an investment. Because if I can invest and develop my people and my GMs and put systems in place, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to be more profitable. That's what it is. And that's why people have financial systems to begin with, is to keep score and to figure out where things are not working as efficiently as they could and adjusting accordingly. So, we run the gambit of who's doing what inside of their hotels as it relates to the finances, but that doesn't mean we can't up our game. It doesn't mean we can't get better, because that's what I do with clients all the time, is help them figure out what they need to do and put these processes and communication systems in place so they can move from the cash basis of accounting to monthly financial statements to actually doing a budget and then actually doing a rolling forecast. And then all of a sudden they've got tools to manage their business.
Well, and speaking of profitability, I feel like that's the name of the game right now, right? For hotels. I think I may have actually heard you say this, which I found to be absolutely fascinating, is traditionally RevPAR has been the name of the game. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say something somewhere that was like GOPPAR should be the name of the game now.
Absolutely.
Because it's just, again, when you have rising labor costs that are kind of going through the roof, and rates are now going to take many years to catch up to where we thought they could have been. It just seems like the business. Plus the tightening of the grip from the brands onto the franchisees with different vendor requirements and things that cost more money, different everything is costing more money now.
Yeah.
But we don't have the same revenues and the same rate that we once had. So what do you think about this? And you did say that, right? About the GOPPAR?
Yeah, absolutely. But let's step back not that long ago, let's say 25 years ago. Nobody knew what RevPAR index was. STR came along and changed the world by capturing and measuring RevPAR index. Before that, we used to do the call around, and people would lie to each other about their occupancy and rates, and
count cars in the parking lots.
Whatever, yeah. But STR totally changed our industry, and now, like a lot of management agreements, having a positive RevPAR index is built right into, the clauses. And if I don't have a positive RevPAR index, which is above 100%, the owner can kick me out, take the flag down, and hire somebody else and not pay me a dime in penalties. So we've grown from that now, and we've realized that, measuring revenue is really important. It's the beginning point of the journey. But if I'm not delivering profit, and if I'm not delivering an index of profit that's superior, then what am I doing as a management company saying I can manage your hotel and do a good job?
Right. So, and for those who don't know, because I think, again, we may have gone a little bit over some of our audience's head here, and I want to be very sensitive to that. Management company, HMAs, hotel management agreements, are typically constructed that there's a base fee and an incentive fee. And typically that base fee is a percentage of revenue generated, and the incentive fee, which is much smaller, would be a percentage of profits. So the hotel ownership wants to see that you're generating revenues, but also running the hotel efficiency. Would you say that I'm on point right now, David? Anything you want to correct me on?
I would say that management companies, the traditional branded management companies, they make like 99% of their revenue from base fees, not from incentive fees. Incentive fees are something that were popular for a while, but they really aren't that important as it relates to the overall picture, because lots of times the brands weren't earning them. So
right. So there's no incentive for them to even run the hotel profitably now.
When you look at a brand and you look at the relationship with the owner, what the brand wants is the owner to keep the hotel looking tip-top. Because when clients come and stay there, they think they're staying at X 4-star brand, and they have certain expectations. They have no idea that there's an owner behind the door that's somebody else. So that's the brand promise, is to, deliver the service, but the owner needs to put everything in place to make that happen. And when you flip that around, what that means is, if we can drive the top line as a management company, we're making our revenues. If you're not making your GOP, or if you're making less than your share as a management company, I might be concerned, but it's really not critical. It's critical to the owner. Just look at the last year and how many owners have gone underwater with their businesses because of COVID. Well, management companies have taken a hit as well, but when you look at the proportion of the hit relative to the owner, it's nowhere near as drastic. So
so that's the kind of structuring with a lot of our listeners right now are working in that kind of environment where they have a management company. So now you know how they get paid. So now let's talk about, what is RevPAR, what is RevPAR index, what is GOP, and what is GOPPAR index, and how is that important now? Because maybe that's the future of hotel management agreements.
Yeah. Well, just back up the truck for a second, because in the hotel world, there's really two different types of, there's three. There's still some owner operators where the name on the door is the owner. Like, what's the name I'm trying to think of? It's escaping me right now, but there's one prominent company in the US that owns all of their hotels still. Omni, that's what I'm trying to think of. And then there's what we call branded managed hotels, like Four Seasons, Fairmont. And then there are franchised hotels. So in the franchise model, we introduce what's known as the management company. So there's an owner, there's the franchise owner, and then there's a management company. Usually the owner doesn't know anything about the hotel business. They let the management company interact with the local team and manage the hotel. They sit on the sidelines and hopefully it works out. So that's an important distinction, is what kind of property are we talking about? How does it function? What's its business model? And those are the three main kinds. So when it comes to RevPAR and RevPAR index, two different things. So RevPAR is the coming together of occupancy and rate. So if my occupancy last night was 75% and my average rate was $100, then my RevPAR is $75. $75 equals the revenue per available room. The other way to calculate that is to simply take your room revenue and divide it by the number of rooms available, not occupied, but available, and you'll get the same number, $75. So then RevPAR index is different than that. So when we measure RevPAR index, we're comparing it to a competitive set of hotels, usually 5 or 6 other hotels that are just like our hotel, that typically compete for the same clients in the same marketplace. And what STR does is all of those hotels report their data, they put it all together, and it's like looking at mom's apple pie that she just sliced up at the dinner table, and who got a bigger piece? That's a positive index. If I get the biggest slice of that business inside of that comp set, then I have a positive index. It's above 100%. And
that's in the revenue, from a revenue perspective, right? So we're only, just to clarify everybody, that is just revenues.
Just RevPAR. But I don't take RevPAR to the bank. I take profits to the bank. So I believe, and so do a lot of other people in our industry, that the next big thing, because now we have the same kind of data that STR was able to put together 25 years ago. Now there's companies like HotStats that can actually measure your entire operation and compare it to those same competitive hotels. And they can pinpoint exactly what your labor cost is, what your food and beverage costs are, what your payroll costs are, and compare them and say, well, this hotel has actually got a great RevPAR, but when you look at the GOPPAR, it's actually not performing as well as it could. Oh my gosh, what do we do about that? Well, we need to manage better. We need to have different ways of dealing with our costs. And that's where I think our industry is moving, because we're growing as an industry, and the ability of all of our management companies and management teams, the tools we have, things are a lot more sophisticated than they were 25 years ago or even 10 years ago. And now we have the ability to measure that. So I really believe that if I'm a management company, what do I sell? I sell expertise, guests, colleagues, and the money. And if I can prove to you, and that's what I could with a positive index, that I can manage, my brand can manage your hotel better than the other guy, I'm going to get your management contract. I'm going to get your business. I'm going to grow my brand. That's what it's all about.
And yeah, so or GOP, I should say, gross operating profit, is just for everybody, if you're not familiar, right? This is the, I guess, the bottom line that the operator that the operators typically have control over before you have your insurance costs, property taxes, energy, that kind of stuff.
GOP is what we commonly refer to as the manager's number. So everything above GOP, as the manager, I control the revenues, the payroll, cost of goods, and the expenses. Everything below GOP are deemed to be items that are out of my control. They're the owner's costs, like you said, insurance, property taxes, leases, depreciation, things like that the owner's really driving the boat when it comes to that. But everything else above GOP, as the GM, that's my ball game. That's my responsibility. So that's why we measure GOP. GOP per available room is simply calculated by taking the GOP for the hotel, the dollar amount, and dividing it by the number of available rooms.
And that's obviously the bulk of running the hotel. That other stuff, the owner's worried about insurance and taxes and everything like that, depreciation. And then that bottom line, that net operating income is actually what the owner is going to take home at the end of the day. So as an operator, GOP being that number at the bottom of the bulk of that P&L and that financial statement is critical to the owner taking home a much bigger NOI and bigger profit. So hopefully we didn't go too technical for everybody listening, but I think that's important to know because a lot of people just are, again, like we talked about at the top of the program, are just very, very unfamiliar with these, what I would consider to be basic concepts. Now, diving in more is obviously you can get way more in depth, but just being aware of it, I think is a great place to start, don't you?
Well, absolutely. And, we have a wonderful thing in our industry, and it's called the Uniform System of Accounts for the Lodging Industry, or some people call it USALI, which is kind of the acronym. But it basically defines what goes above GOP and what goes below GOP. And the other reason why we stop at GOP and want to compare our hotels to like hotels at GOP is that everything below the line can be very different depending on the ownership structure and how they do things. Some hotels have mortgages, some don't. Some hotels have leases, some don't. Some hotels have the fixed assets on the books, some are on the owner's books. So if we start comparing all of those things, we're not comparing apples and apples anymore. Whereas GOP, all of us have exactly the same things to manage above GOP. So that's why we manage to GOP.
Yeah, that's interesting and I honestly, I guess I never really thought about it, but yeah, there's so many different ways that the ownership can be nuanced, right? That,
different ways they can own the building, basically.
And you know what? And as you talked about, because now we're not owner operators anymore. There's hoteliers, and then there's real estate investors. And as hoteliers, we have what we're going to focus on, and they have what they're going to focus on, and what we can help.
That's a really important thing to think about because, a lot of our hotels are owned by institutional owners, like REITs, as an example. Sorry, that was my doorbell.
That
was the mailman. But so when REITs own hotels, they own hundreds of them, and they're looking for a return on their investment. So they're looking for tools to do exactly what I just described when it comes to managing better and comparing hotels to other hotels in their comp sets. And quite frankly, they're licking their chops thinking that, we're going to be going in the direction of GOP per available room because they're going to have a much greater lever over the management companies as it comes to how they manage these assets. And again, our industry is growing in its abilities and sophistication. And if I want to be a management company in the year 2021 and beyond, I better be able to embrace GOP per available room and deliver for my owner. That's what the new norm should be.
This is a thought that just popped in my head that you've actually kind of inspired me to think about. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. There's been a lack of innovation in the hotel industry. I mean, the biggest hotel brand on the face of the earth still uses a DOS-based property management system, just to name one thing, right? But I think that's just a symptom of a lack of innovation in general, right?
Well, no,
I think
hold on.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because there's a real good reason why that exists. So management companies don't own hotels anymore, largely speaking. Like 99% of them are owned by somebody else. So the management company is not going to invest in those things like computer systems.
Right.
They need the owner to do that. That's the problem. That's why we don't have a great deal of innovation in our industry, is because management companies don't have that kind of skin in the game. If they did and they still owned their hotels, it would be a different world. So what we got to do is find ways, and measuring GOP per available room in an index is a wonderful way to do that, to show the owner how we can drive better results with greater investment in things like tools like software.
Well, and I agree, because the thought was, right now the hotel management companies aren't even fighting for the owners to innovate. They're, because what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to be in a consulting expertise capacity to the owner who, assuming they know nothing about hotels, right? And they're not fighting it because as long as they get revenues, it doesn't matter. But once you flip the coin and they have to focus on profitability, even if they're not going to be investing their own money into the asset, because again, they still don't own it, they're at least going to be, going up to bat for the owner and saying, hey, we need this. If you want to return this profitability, good luck, unless we get X, Y, and Z going, right? Would you agree, or how do you feel?
An important thing to keep in mind is the relationship between the owner and the brand. And again, we're talking about a branded managed hotel, not a franchise hotel. So in that world, the branded managed hotel, the brand mandates through the annual budget process all of the programs the hotel has to put in place, all of the standards, the training, all of the amenities, all of the guest interactive processes to capture comments and results, the employee opinion survey, uniforms, HR programs, you name it, soup to nuts, the brand mandates and the owner pays. The brand doesn't pay for anything.
Right.
And it's up to the management company to decide what their standards are. And per the terms of the management agreement, the owner has to pay as long as it's approved in the annual budget. And that's the song and dance that takes so long every year to get the budget approved. To maintain the standard, if the brand decides we need to put in a new program, then the owner would have to pay. Now, that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be a lot of discussion around that and some convincing that needs to be done, but brands do have the ability to influence how their hotels operate. And again, pushing the envelope into GOP per available room and an index around that, around my performance, is really going to help me convince the owner that that's the best course of action to take. Because at the end of the day, we're going to see the result.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So on another topic that I think is important, right? For our listeners who are hotel school graduates, currently enrolled in hotel school, when they're done, they should be just fine to dive in and start running the hotel financials flawlessly, right?
No.
Wrong, huh? Okay.
Doesn't work that way. No. But
why not, David? Why is it that our hotel industries or hotel school graduates are ill-equipped to run the financials? Isn't that why you go to hotel school in the first place?
You're baiting me here pretty good, but I wrote an article as titled, why teaching accounting in hotel school is a waste of time. And I went to hotel school, so I know it was a waste of time when I went there, but they're teaching all the wrong stuff. So they're teaching hotel people like you and like me in the beginning, operations people, how to do accounting. Well, 99.9% of those people will never, ever do a journal entry. They'll never, ever do month end. We need to teach them things that are practical, like how to do a schedule, how to do zero-based expenses, how to build a staffing guide, how to calculate productivity, how to measure flow through. What about RevPAR index? All the things that I talk about when it comes to financial leadership, it's not accounting that people need to know, it's business thinking. And those are the tools we need to teach our people in hotel schools, because they can't get those typically from books and from instruction, because there's a million books on accounting out there, but there aren't a million books on how to do your schedule or how to manage your expenses. Those are the things we learn on the fly in our jobs, hopefully. And we learn that through a series of being mentored, being thrown into the deep end, and hopefully we figure it out. And that's really what my business is all about, is changing all of that, because I believe there's, again, a system that we can teach people that's very predictive as it relates to their payroll and their expenses. And it's all about getting the managers, the department managers, involved and get them trained.
Okay, so the school really isn't helping too much for when, and maybe some of our listeners who have experienced this will understand now that they've graduated and they've entered the hotel sphere. So interestingly enough, as a hotel financial coach yourself, you've really kind of established you've seen the need, number one, as we've discussed, and then you said to yourself, I need to start helping, I need to change this. What inspired you to be David Lund, hotel financial coach?
Yeah. The story is I was a director of finance in a really large hotel in Toronto, and I couldn't put together an accurate forecast to save my life. And every month I'd have that meeting like you described earlier with the asset manager. And I remember one month I missed GOP by almost $500,000. And he just looked at me and said, David, do you know what in HE double hockey sticks is going on in my hotel? And he was like, scary, right? and I said, yeah, I do. But, we had a couple of surprises and we had a really soft month in this market. And I gave him the same
same thing every time.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. But all the while I knew what the problem was. The problem was I couldn't get the other department managers in the hotel to tell me what's going to happen in their department. I don't know what's going to happen in the kitchen or maintenance or the sales department, where they're at with their expenses. So, we would get old invoices. We would get stuff that didn't make any sense. We would miss things, all because we didn't have a system to follow. And I couldn't get the other department managers in that hotel to play ball. Well, right about the same time, a new GM joined us, and he sat me down and said, David, tell me what's going on in accounting. And I gave him my story and told him what my biggest challenge was, that I can't get the other managers to give me their forecast, to do their commentary. I can't get them to do anything financially that's any good anyways, or on time. And he said, I have an idea. Why don't you create a workshop and you can teach them all why these numbers are so important and what they need to do. And I just looked at him and I said, look at my desk over there. I'm already here 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And besides that, I'm not a teacher. I don't know even where to begin. I'm not a teacher. What are you talking about? He goes, I'll make it real easy for you. No workshop, no bonus for David this year. How would that be? Because in the company I worked in, if you didn't deliver on your personal goals, and he made that workshop my personal goal, you wouldn't get your bonus. So I set to and created my first financial leadership workshop, HR conscripted. In Canada, we don't draft, we conscript 30 of the worst offenders to come spend an entire day with me. And I was pretty sure that my workshop was going to suck and that I was going to suck and that I would probably die delivering it. But the day arrived and I did the workshop. And at the end of the day, something really magical happened. A couple of leaders came to see me and said, I've been here 5 years and nobody's ever explained the P&L to me before. And then I heard, well, how come all of us don't get this training from day one as department managers? And then before I knew it, that same day, I had a lineup of people wanting to share their thoughts with me. And it was all around the same thing. And I was completely blown away because I knew I was onto something, because we don't train people in our industry around the numbers, but maybe we should. That's what occurred to me. And from that point forward, we did the workshop again a couple of months later. I didn't have to conscript anybody. We had a full roster. And for the next 5 or 6 years inside of my company, I did this workshop many times. I got promoted to regional controller, so I would do it in all of the hotels in my region. And it got to the point where people were phoning me that I didn't even know and saying, can you come to my hotel and do your workshop? I've heard about it. It's great.
Oh, wow. It just kind of naturally, because people were so excited to learn.
Yeah. And our hotel won our company has a big International Innovation Award, and we won the following year for my workshop, which I was thrilled about. And, it all comes back to the same 3 things that happen every time I do a workshop. And one is the leaders see that it's not so difficult when you get a group of people together, even virtually. they quickly realize that it's the same in each department. We got to manage our payroll, we got to manage our expenses. And then the second thing is that people naturally want to make a difference. And like you described earlier, how good it felt to be on top of your numbers and be close to the engine room. If you can show people that they make a difference, they'll naturally want to do that. That's in our DNA to want to make a difference. Then the third part is there's an immediate and measurable return on investment for the training. And as a director of finance, I would always rail on the HR people that would come to me with purchase orders for service training. And I would say, when am I going to get my money back for this? And they would look at me like, you're so mean, David.
How dare you ask that
There's
question?
no way we can measure the return on investment for training. We just need to do it. But with this training, you can, because if I can show you how to run your department finances better, what you're going to come back to me next month and next quarter and next year with are ideas on how you can save money. David, I found how we can save on toilet paper. I found out how we can save on our laundry costs. I've done this, I've re-engineered this, it's going to result in so many dollars. All of a sudden, if I keep track of those and I measure that back to the cost for training all of my leaders, I've got an amazing ROI. And I can show the owner how much we've improved their profitability by. And for the owner, this is hot stuff, because if I can improve the GOP in your hotel by, say, $100,000 by having a squad of leaders that are plugged into their numbers, you know what that's worth to the owner? Using a cap rate of 8, that's worth $1.2 million in increased asset value. And that's what they care about, because they're going to hopefully one day, not too far down the road, sell the hotel for more than they bought it for. That's their game.
Right, because they're not in it for the cash flow necessarily, right? The cash flows, like, they care, right? But that's not the long-term. They're real estate investors. They're there to appreciate the asset and sell it after a holding period. I never considered that.
Buy it, do a PIP, hold it for 2-3 years. Hopefully you time the market and flip it and sell it for many millions of dollars more than you paid for it. That's the whole game. And by having a financially engaged leadership team inside the hotel, this is how we as a management company can help the owners do that.
You know, I love how you tied that all up with the bow at the end, with the cap rate and the increased asset value. That's smart, and that's what I'm talking about. So, okay, I think at this point, I don't know about you guys, and by that I mean for those listening, but I'm ready to learn more about hotel finance. I'm ready to learn more about the numbers, how I can impress my bosses, how I can be an asset to my hotel team. I'm ready to be more engaged and to unlock the door to the executive office with financial leadership. David, how can they do that? How can you help our audience? How can you help everybody in this industry get to where they want to go?
Well, one thing everybody can do, it's absolutely free. Actually, 2 things. One is go to my website, hotelfinancialcoach.com. All it requires is your email address, and I will never spam you or sell your address, but you'll get a copy of my free guidebook. It's about 10,000 words. It's called The 7 Secrets to Creating a Financially Engaged, that's an engaged word, leadership team in your hotel. It's a great guide. And then when you do that, you'll also get a automatic copy of my weekly blog. And I've been writing a blog now for 5 years. And I've got over 250 articles on my website that are absolutely free that you can go read and educate yourself. You put them together, you've got more than enough information to really energize your financial leadership skills all by yourself. The other thing you can obviously do is, go to my website, click on the link and schedule a call, and then talk to me about some of my workshops or my online mentoring or my one-on-one mentoring programs. I offer those.
And that's free, right? For them to get on the phone with you and inquire is free, correct?
Yeah, I'll have a one-on-one conversation with anyone who wants to talk about their financial leadership skills or the team skills and how I can help them or their team with my online mentoring or workshops. Absolutely. And yeah, it's a phone call away. So reach out and figure out how I can help you. But at the same time, I know, not everybody can afford to do that. But everybody can afford to spend a couple hours a week on my website reading about these things. And there's some amazing articles in there. I publish every week on LinkedIn as well. And if you go to our hospitality online magazines, you'll find a ton of my articles there as well. So read, self-educate yourself. And if you're ready to take a big step in your career, and if you want to talk about your own ROI and what that means to your bottom line as an employee, and how much more money you can earn having financial leadership skills, then have a call with me, and I can help you understand that and explain how it all works.
And I also want to make it clear too, right? Let's say that there's somebody who's listening right now because the title of this episode encapsulated them into being like, this is perfect timing, because right now my GM told me I need to do this financial assignment of some sort, whether it's doing the forecast for the first time or writing out the budget for my department. And I have no idea. I'm stuck and I just need help with this. Are you available to assist clients with individual projects and help them with those kind of as needed type of assistance? Is that something you also offer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have packages that are as small as 3 calls. I have much bigger packages, obviously, but yeah, absolutely. Just if you got an idea of some way that I can help you, call me. Let's talk about it, and I'll help you figure out how to do that. Absolutely. And I've helped clients with all kinds of things, kind of the way you expressed it, as well as, I even helped a lady put together a pro forma for a dog hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's going to happen. And, you can't stay there. If you don't have a dog, you can't book a room.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there's nothing. So what you're saying is there's no project that you can't help them with when it comes to hotel finances.
If it comes
essentially, right?
Yeah. If it comes to how we operate the hotel and how departmental managers function, that's my expertise, is operational accounting. If it comes to, finance and, deals and stuff, that's not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is operational finances.
Absolutely. And I think that's definitely the wheelhouse of our listeners. Now, guys, I'm talking to you now because you know me, if you've been listening to this show for a while, that like I'm never one to really gas up or energize like people's businesses. Like I try to stay very neutral on this, but the reason I brought David onto the show today is because after speaking with him off the record prior to this interview, I realized that I really do think that he adds tremendous value to you, because I know what you're going through, because I'm going through it too. And I want to learn more about financials as well. And that's why, and David and I plan on working together as well to help build up my financial acumen. And I want the Hospitality MD audience to be killing it at their hotel jobs. And I think, and that's really why I'm so excited about what David does, is because it just matters. It's just important, because people have less anxiety at work when they know what the hell is going on. And if you can, whether you're a GM and it's your regional, or you're a department head and it's your AGM or director, whatever, when somebody can come to you and ask you a question and you know the answer confidently, it changes your entire working experience. And I think that's really what this is all about. It's peace of mind, it's confidence, it's growth. And again, I know there's a disparity in this industry about teaching it. And honestly, I don't know anybody else but David who's doing it. And he's super friendly and he's a good teacher. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening. David, thank you for being on the show. Thanks for teaching us. We actually got a lot of free information here about just the basics, budgeting, forecasting, RevPAR, GOPPAR, all this stuff that I think a lot of people will benefit from regardless. So it's just, thank you for your contributions, truly.
My pleasure. We need to do another segment and continue the learning. And personally, my goal is that our industry changes and we start to educate our leaders on the finances at a much greater rate. And I know we can do it. So thanks for helping promote that, Kyle. Great interview.
My pleasure. Guys, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out David Lund's LinkedIn profile and his website and sign up for his newsletter. All that's going to be in the description there. A lot of free resources that he's offering to help you guys be better. Let me know in the comments if you knew about RevPAR Index and GOPPAR and all this stuff, or if this was all completely new to you. Give me your biggest takeaway, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.